Hello, Victor. You actually have already shared that with us. So it's an honor to be in the presence of all of you. It's already there.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Christian. Good afternoon.
How's everybody?
Great.
Hello.
Hello, Christian.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Hello,
also,
Massimo.
hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hello there.
Hi. Hi, Joe.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Tony.
Hello.
Nice to meet you too.
So we are also all live on the Global Peace Foundation Facebook page now.
Perfect.
So we start in 2 minutes.
Right.
Our conference.
Should I share my screen again?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So Carlos, please be ready to talk. You'll be the first one to present, and then Massimo, just to say hello. And then I'm gonna ask the panelists, first Joe, second Tony, and then Aline, okay? For the opening remarks.
Massimo,
Yes?
are you already streaming?
Yeah,
Yes.
on the Global
Facebook.
Peace Foundation
Okay.
website.
Okay.
People are joining us.
So we can start, it's 1:30.
Okay, great. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar Attitudes, Values, and Skills. It is part of the project Education, Methods, and Tools. It's a partnership between our Federal Institute Farroupilha and Global Peace Foundation. So I am Professor Stephanie Diaz, and I will be the moderator of today's session, okay? So now I'd like to introduce Carlos Rodrigo Len. He is the Dean of Institutional Development of IFFar, our institute. Thank you, Carlos. Be welcome.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Firstly, I would like to say good afternoon or good morning, considering the USA time. And after this, I'd like to greet Stephanie, and on your behalf, greet everyone, and especially greet our speakers, Aline, Tony, and Joey. My name is Carlos Rodrigo Len, and I'm here representing Dr. Nidia Heringer, Dean of our institution. We are here today to discuss a very important topic, especially considering the moment that education lives in Brazil. Certainly, an innovative education involves the developing of attitudes, values, and skills which can positively transform our society. Today, there is still little spoken in our educational systems about some of these important skills: emotional intelligence, critical thinking, leadership, and creativity, especially thinking about how these skills can be useful to solve real problems of our society. Stephanie, congratulations on this wonderful proposal. This project has an enormous potential. I think you should consider the possibility of expanding it to other units of our institution. And finally, I want to thank our speakers for contribution to this project. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of you for the wonderful work that you do with the Global Peace Foundation. Thanks again for support this project, and I wish an excellent meeting for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. That's our goal, to expand the project, right, Massimo? Now I'd like to call Massimo Trombin from Global Peace Foundation.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning to our friends from the North Hemisphere. So we are very happy to be here today. This is a project that it took some time to build up and to make it a reality. You can see from the expression of Stephanie how happy she is because she really worked hard for this. You know, Stephanie, she has been one of our participants a couple of years ago in the United States on our international leadership program. And since that time, we cooperate in many different initiatives on conferences and dialogue, etc. And actually, today meeting is very important for the Global Peace Foundation Brazil and Global Peace Foundation International as well, because education for us is one of the pillars of our activities around the world. And today we are very pleased to have Dr. Tony Devine with us, that is the director of this department for the Global Peace Foundation International. He has an enormous experiences in the field, as well as our friends that are in our call, like John Carvin, that I met a few years ago in some of our meetings around the world. And for the first time, I met Aline and the dean of the Federal Institute. We really hope, like he mentioned, that this initiative will be multiplied and it can really provide a real service to educators to provide more tools, more possibility for themselves to serve better their students and as well as the society at large. So all the best, all the wishes for great success for today. And thank you for your support and participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Massimo. I'd like to also thank Christian Breckman, who is here for his presence. He's representing the Dean of Extension and International Relations Advisory of IFFar. Thank you for your presence, Christian. So the format of today's session is the following. We have the opening remarks of Joe, Tony, and Aline. Then we have 3 rounds of questions made by our participants, right? And then the final remarks. So please note that we'll be posting some links in the chat, and please feel free to post comments or any question. Professor Jelly Valim will collect this content in the Zoom chat, and Barbara Avila will mediate the Facebook chat. So now I'd like to call Joseph Carvin. Thank you very much for being here with us, Joe.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you very much. Muito obrigado a meus amigos brasileiros. Me dá uma grande oportunidade para falar portanhol, não português. But my name is Joe Carvin. I'm the founder and executive director of One World. And if you want this presentation, you have my contact details there. If you want to get in touch, I have a very easy email. The first thing I want to do is welcome you into the One World family. One World has 3 foundational principles. 1, all human beings share an essential human connection. 2, we need new forms of global cooperation if humanity is going to succeed well. And 3, we need to generate respectful, fallible conversations if we're going to ever understand our increasingly complex world. For the course of the last 10 years, One World has grown from 1 classroom in Portchester, New York, to over 200 classrooms around the world. And ultimately, we're not yet in Brazil, so I'm hopeful that you'll help me come to Brazil. Basically, we believe that there are 2 foundational challenges in today's 21st century educational world. We need to prepare our children for a rapidly globalizing world of exponential technological change. as our friend from Harvard, Dr. Ramers, tells us, those that are prepared for globalization can turn it into a competitive advantage, and those that aren't may be left behind. The founder of Davos and the author of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Klaus Schwab, tells us the most important and intense challenge facing humanity today is to understand and shape the technology revolution. We believe he's correct. Now, if there's one thing you leave away with today, it's to understand the difference between linear world and a world of exponential change. In a linear world, if I take 30 steps, that's our everyday experience. You go from the front of the room to the back of the room. With 30 exponential steps, with 30 doublings, you end up 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. You end up at 1 billion. Now, people don't understand the difference between 1 billion and 30. How far can I go with 1 billion steps? Can I get to China? Yes. Can I circumnavigate the globe one time? Yes. Can I circumnavigate the globe 25 times? Yes. And that's precisely why we need to begin to prepare our students for 20,000 years of change. Futurists tell us that 20,000 years of change is what they're going to experience their lifetime, and that's because of Moore's Law. Basically, Moore's Law says computing capacity is going to double every 18 months, which is why I have more computing capacity in my hand than in the rocket ship that went to the moon. How are we doing? Well, Edward O. Wilson from Harvard tells us not so well. We've hurtled into the 21st century with a bizarre combination of Stone Age emotions, medieval beliefs, and godlike technology. However, it's never been a more important time to be an educator. We believe that educators are all important. And what we need educators to do, in our view, is to understand, one, we're currently on a non-sustainable course, but two, if we use technology well, and three, if we begin to understand the options for the 21st century, think logically about our future, and collectively take rational action, what can we do? We can bring an end to poverty and hunger. And before you think I'm getting too optimistic, for the first time in humanity, all of humanity is coming together around the Sustainable Development Goals to achieve that goal in 2030. So what is One World? What are the skills that One World's trying to develop? Three competencies: global competence, financial readiness, and technology readiness, all underpinned by values, character, education. Our students entering school today are going to be living to the year 2100 and beyond. What can we give them? Good values and competencies. In addition, and for us, global competence involves global education, character education, and service learning, but you can't understand the world around us today without understanding technology and financial education. In terms of the attitudes, again, I have a lot of information embedded in the presentation if you want it. There's a fantastic article from McKinsey that tells us what you need are growth and curiosity mindset. The capacity to learn is the most important skill set today. And Thomas Friedman in this article tells us we need to create our future value every day. And finally, as I said, for us, character is all important. It's a dimension of life that helps us persevere during challenges, treat others with dignity, and advance our community. And in a global society today, we desperately need to develop our compassion and integrity to value each and every member of the human community. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you very much.
Stop sharing now too, right?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your insights. Now I'd like to ask Tony Devine for his input, please.
I'm good now. All right.
You're on mute.
Oh, put mute on me.
Tony, unmute yourself, Tony.
Audio. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes,
great.
yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay, very good. So yeah, thank you very much, Stephanie, Massimo, and Joe for your presentation just now. So as we, as teachers, as educators, as we look into the future, we are called upon to prepare our students for a very rapidly changing world, as Joe was referring to. When we look at the economic side of things, scientific knowledge is creating amazing new opportunities that can enrich our lives, while at the same time fueling disruptive waves of change in every sector. So our students have to manage this, our graduates. Also on the social side, we're seeing great inequalities in living standards and life chances are widening. And we're seeing more conflict and instability and inertia are increasing. And we've seen this in the past year, even in several countries. And then the environment too is, you know, we have limited natural resources. So all of these things, we have to prepare our students to actively prepare for these things. We also have to prepare them for new employment readiness opportunities. Joe talked about the fourth industrial revolution. We have things like artificial intelligence, automation, Internet of Things, big data and analytics, cyber currencies, augmented human skills. But many times people ask, where does the human being come into all of this? Very much so, very centrally, because we need deeper human input more than ever before to guide these technologies, such as critical thinking and especially value judgments. When we look at the modern workforce, whether it's small, medium, or large companies, employers are looking for something way beyond the traditional college graduation certificate, right? Or bachelor's degree or high school certificate. They're looking for employees who can collaborate, who can solve problems, who are entrepreneurial in their thinking, who are purpose-driven, who are really, really good at relationships and communication, creativity. These are often called 21st century skills, right? OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, in 2015 started a project called Education 2030. It's trying to answer two questions. What knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes will today's students need to thrive and shape their world? And secondly, how can instructional systems develop these knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values? When we talk about value, skills, and new knowledge, they're not equal. In fact, values are at the core here. Joe had this in one of his slides. Values were in the center around the technologies and so on. So values, good character, having that moral compass is becoming actually more and more important today than ever before. When we look at skills like the ones I just cited, right, that are often called 21st century skills like cooperation, creativity, they're actually value neutral. So values are undergirding, need to guide those skills. And then the skills then actually apply the new knowledge to solve the pressing problems around us. So we hear a lot of talk on skills and new knowledge, but very little on the importance of value. So this relationship is really important. Teachers too and professors more and more have to become moral leaders, I believe, where they have the life arc of their students in mind versus an exclusive focus on performance in final exams. And they play a very important role to instill values. They become models, right? They become that role model to inspire and cultivate love. And that's balanced with teachers and professors being innovative leaders. In other words, being designers of learning versus knowledge transmitters, become those master facilitators, unleashing creativity and curiosity in their students. And we're talking about transformational change here. First of all, we, the educators, have to be transformed. Then we can transform the culture of our classrooms and schools. And that's how the students actually become transformed. And that's where we can have the impact. In terms of a theory of change, you know, as we saw last year through the pandemic, we have to be continuous learners, not just the students, but the teachers as well, right? We have to stay on top of things. So it's continuous, nonstop learning. Let me get to the final points here. More than ever before, we have to stop thinking of education in a silo, but start thinking about it in a whole of society approach, bridging systems, schools, parents, students, communities, and employers together. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share these few points here today.
Thank you very much, Tony, for your focus on values and on our challenges. So now I'd like to ask Aline Lorange for her point of view. She has a new perspective on that as well. Thank you, Aline, for joining us.
Thank you. Can you share for me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My speech today is motivated by the recent classroom issues, which point to students' behavior that is characterized by lack of interest, inadequate expression of feelings, and lack of motivation. At a time when knowledge is so important, when the lack of scientific dissemination had led us to everything we are experiencing nowadays, it seems to me urgent that we can reflect on who are the young people we intend to educate in our classrooms, in person or remotely. Okay. Yeah, my dog decided to bark.
Aline, I'm gonna share your presentation here, don't worry.
Yeah, okay, I just started, just a minute. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. The last 30 years have seen a technological revolution which has allowed us to unveil some secrets of the organ that allowed us to live and learn, the brain. You can go on the slide. The brain is composed of two hemispheres which throughout life specialize in different functions processed by its four lobes. The occipital lobe responsible for vision, the temporal lobe responsible for hearing, the parietal lobe responsible for the motor skills, and the frontal lobe, in whose most frontal part, the prefrontal cortex, play very important functions. The development of these functions depends on stimulation. If a child, even if he is born with the capacity to see, does not receive visual stimuli, he will be blind. If it is blindfolded, for example, the first 15 days of life, his vision will not develop. Development also happens backwards, and therefore the functions of the frontal lobe are the last to be developed. The development of the prefrontal cortex extends through childhood and adolescence. You can go on, Stephanie. In the prefrontal cortex, this red part of the brain in the image, executive functions are processed, which include the ability to plan, to make decisions, the cognitive flexibility, the notion of cause and consequence, the management of emotion and attention, and inhibitory control. Teachers and parents are used to the need to stimulate vision, hearing, and motor aspects. The stimulation of executive functions has always been done in a very intuitive and non-reflective way. We learn the notion of cause and consequence from fear and not from the understanding what our actions really mean. You can go on. As we evolve as a society, we leave education, our fear behind. That's awesome. But we threw the baby out with the bathwater. Children do what they want. They are not motivated to do their best. They beat their parents out loud. The parents always make decisions for them. And they are created to dominate the intellect, not the emotions. The result of this is the society that we have, unable, for instance, to manage a pandemic because people cannot understand the consequences of their actions. People are frustrated and anxious because they cannot do what they want. And we have governments around the world that are unable to take scientifically and well-informed decisions. You can go on. The adolescent brain undergoes profound changes. Its executive functions are under development, but are understimulated. In addition, their emotions are altered. It is more difficult to motivate them. They are as if anesthetized. This often creates the need to take risks, which generate more adrenaline. With the executive functions under development and understimulated, it becomes more difficult to think about the consequences of these risky actions. I believe that our role as teachers is to stimulate these functions. We must ask ourselves every day, and including our plans, you can go on. And go again. These questions, what do they need? How can I help? I can lend you my prefrontal cortex. What could be the impact or consequences if you keep from doing something? How can I do that? Teens need to be stimulated the way their brain understands. You can go on. It's necessary for them to know challenging environments which encourage them to undertake and assume their role in life. Until they can do all of this for themselves, we lend them our prefrontal cortex as adults, as teachers, as we suggest ways on how to use their executive functions, allowing them to participate in decision-making, predicting the consequences of their actions, and exercising cognitive flexibility to think about a plan B. The consequences of continuing to educate young people whose executive functions are understimulated can be severe. The future holds technological challenges, new pandemics, and unimaginable ethical issues, and the leaders we are forming need to be better prepared. For the students, embrace your reality and do something about it. Stop running from it. Your life is happening now. Use your voice wisely. Learn, learn, learn. We are born to learn. Get out of the audience seats. You are the protagonist, but you must be open to learn how to do that properly. Life is going to charge you for that. Use time to your advantage. You have time. Don't wait until you are asked to assume your leadership. Be aware that you make the choices. Always. There are always choices to be made. You are responsible for them, for the good and for the bad. As Gandhi used to say, be the change you want to see in the world. And I would like to add, start it now. Thank you. You can go on. This is my channel on YouTube. Please subscribe. And the last slide is thank you.
Thank you very much, Helene. That's a different perspective, and I think this is really important. And we have a challenge, how to equalize both well-informed decisions and emotions. That's a very key question. So right now, I'd like to share my screen again, because we're moving on to the Q&A session of this webinar, okay? So let me share my screen again with you. And then we have the first question in the screen. So the first question is how to bring that balance among three elements: attitudes, values, and skills in real-life challenge. Please, Joe, if you would like to say some words about that, it would be great. The question is made by Sunuk Khan from Global Peace Win.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the question. And second of all, I'm going to agree with Tony. We teach global competence. In fact, all of our competencies, at the center of each of these competencies is character, education, and values. You know, children entering the school today, you know, will be living well into the 22nd century. We have no idea what the world's going to look like in 2050, 2075, much less 2100. But what can we give them today that will last them a lifetime? And that's a good, strong, foundational base of values. So of the three, I would emphasize the values, but I agree also you need all three. I think it's a combination. So your question is an excellent question because we need the balance of the three. In terms of the next, after values, I would emphasize attitudes. Because for me, attitudes are the mindset. The mindset is how do you approach each challenge? Again, it's difficult to predict the nature of the challenges going forward, but I do think we can anticipate that, again, as McKinsey says very clearly, the number one skill set that employers are looking for today is the capacity to learn. So I think having a growth mindset and a curiosity mindset are the attitudes one needs. Doesn't mean competencies aren't important. And the three competencies we emphasize are sufficiently broad-based to last a long time. Global competence, you need to understand the world around you. Financial education. Ultimately, I think students today are going to have to create their own jobs rather than wait for somebody to create their own job for them. And you have to understand exponential technological change. You need to prepare yourself for 20,000 years of change. So when I say technologically competent, understand how exponential technological change is going to transform our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We have many challenges here, right? So the second question is, do you have any examples of actions that have shown to be effective to raise students' awareness about values and attitudes? Please, Tony, feel comfortable to share your thoughts about that.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, in Global Peace Foundation, we've been running an initiative for the past 10 years called the Character and Creativity Initiative. It is actually an intentional effort to cultivate good character and values in students and also among the teachers and educators as well. So it's basically works best when it is a whole school transformation approach. And one of the things that schools do often is create a character competencies committee and come up with actions, right, and strategies to drive good character and shared values school-wide. In the classroom, it's the best way for teachers and adults, the best way for them to cultivate core values such as respect, kindness, responsibility, engaging others, is to model them themselves. Because students are always watching their teachers, right? So they not alone teach it, but they seek it, and students try to catch in turn those good values. And we see a diverse range of educational systems that are pursuing integrated approaches, right, to develop values and attitudes, you know, in their curriculum. For example, the Ministry of Education of Singapore, they have a character and citizenship education branch or department at the ministry itself. And Joe and I are associated with a great organization in the USA called character.org. You'll find amazing examples there. They have an annual National Schools of Character competition where schools, you know, focus on cultivating good character. So many good examples there. And of course, Joe's organization, One World, has these after-school clubs and now school-wide efforts that develop good character. So you can find good examples from the One World website as well.
Thank you very much, Tony. Yeah, I think you should share all these ideas with professors here, especially in the Federal Institute, because we have these qualitative forms and qualitative evaluation. So besides skills, we evaluate values and attitudes as well. So this is really important. Thank you. So next question from Patricia Perlin is how to motivate students to participate in online classes, Aline? How do we do that?
Yeah. Okay, to motivate someone, you have to invest in a couple of things. The first one is to understand a lot about who you want to motivate. If you want to motivate teenagers, for example, you need to understand teenagers to enter the universe as a community of practice. It is also necessary to understand adolescent cognition, to understand what cognitively motivates adolescents, as it is different to motivate children, adolescents, and adults. Teenagers, for example, unlike children, will value the opinions of their peers, their friends, more than yours or their families. But in addition to that, you need to get to know each of the teenagers you live with in your classrooms. Take the time and interest to get to know them, to know their likes and dislikes, what stimulates them, what scares them, where they do come from, the complexity of their lives, their dreams, or the lack of it, which is really revealing too. When you show interest, the relationship can be reciprocal, and this is when the magic happens. The second point is to understand about motivation. The motivation comes from information registered in memory through experiences lived throughout life, and which chemically, through dopamine, informs the brain. This is good. I want more of that. So if you understand teenagers and create an emotionally favorable environment in the classroom for their expression and development, there is a better chance that you will motivate them. Another important point is to create from an early age at school opportunities to protagonism and entrepreneurship. The person who feels protagonist is better able to motivate himself or herself to undertake, believing that his or her ideas can be valuable. In addition, it's necessary to create relationships of trust, promoting self-esteem. Whoever loves himself or herself and loves being in the classroom in an environment of friendship and joint construction is motivated to participate, to be part of what is being built. Value genuinely what your students do, and you'll be certainly motivating them.
Thank you very much, Aline. I guess that's a key point for us here at the Federal Institute nowadays, because we need to work online with our students. So we do not have the ideal scenario because we have like connection problems. Sometimes the students do not have like a proper space to study at home. You have to count on all that as well. So please feel free, Joe, Tony, and Aline, to share any thoughts about that in this first round of questions.
Tony, Aline?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, these questions we're talking about here, right, about nurturing attitudes and values, and these questions have come up and people are wondering, how do we do those? That's actually a good sign. That's a good thing, because we need lots and lots of more of that. This was always important, by the way. This was important in the 20th century, but it is critically important now in 2021. Why? Because the world is changing so fast, right? Things are happening so quick and in such an exponential way, as Joe talked about. So if you have something that's changing so quick, there's got to be a constant, right, that doesn't change. And that's where the character comes in. That's where the core values come in, that North Star, that moral mindset, ethics. These are things that should never change. And that becomes your guiding North Star to navigate effectively through something that's constantly changing. If not, you're going to get swept up in a whirlwind, and you won't know what, where north and south, east and west are, right? So we have to, I think, have more and more discussion around this.
Absolutely.
Well, Stephanie.
Yes, please, Aline, go.
We in Brazil, teachers and students, are truly heroes. We are heroes. If you don't know our reality, I'm going to say we are heroes. You were talking about just one challenge that we have, the lack of access to internet or a bad connection. This is a challenge for now, okay? And it is just one of them. We have to think together of ways to overcome these challenges, but the pandemic will pass. We are going to go back to the classrooms. So we cannot keep thinking just about the problems and the issues of today. We must start thinking of the problems of tomorrow. We have to develop people's brain to thinking better about tomorrow, and of the surprises that life can bring us. The person who is able to manage emotions, who can think of flexible solutions for problems, not just to point problems, but to solve problems, those peoples can solve better the issues of tomorrow, like new pandemics, new situations when we have to stay home and learn remotely. So we are too used to apagar incêndio. I don't know how to speak that.
Putting out fires.
Yeah. We must think in a long term how to solve problems. That's my opinion for that issue in particular.
Stephanie, Joe wants to share something. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, please. In fact, actually, so for everybody listening, I'm not an educator by background. And so what I find when I ask this question, educators pause and have to think. And the question is, imagine I'm a Martian and I came to the planet Earth and you told me you work at a school. And I asked you, what is a school? And what's interesting is I think the definition of what it means to be a school needs to change. I think most people would agree the school is a learning community that normally takes place within a certain set of walls. And it took me 10 years to figure out that one world, I always knew it was a learning community, but it took me 10 years to figure out one world is a 21st century school. And I want everybody that comes into the One World family to think of their colleagues in Brazil, China, Mexico, UK as their colleagues. And I think we need new institutions. I think we need a 21st century school where we use this kind of technology. In fact, I want to thank everybody for organizing this conference today, because this is exactly the way forward, to generate these conversations and not just have the conference one off, but I would love to continue. You know, Tony and I have worked together for a number of years now. I'd love to continue to work with Tony, Global Peace Foundation in Brazil, and Aline and everybody else to jointly come up with solutions. Because I think the fundamental point is the world's so complex today, you need collaboration. So there's no one single answer, and we need that creative collaboration where we can come together and design solutions.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely, Joe. We need to build solutions together. And I have also another question for you, Joe.
Yep.
In a society very focused on the present, how can you encourage students to have projects for the future? That's a question made by Hilton Borges.
Thank you, Hilton. An excellent question again. And again, we're going to be saying a lot of the same things, but maybe I'll say it a little differently. It's never been more important to have character, education, values. And I think it's also never been more important to think about your life purpose. Now, my wife and I always disagree. I said we have a 15 and 17-year-old daughters, so they need to think about life purpose. She says, you haven't even figured out what you want to do. How are we going to have them do it? Now, I'm joking, but ultimately, every day it's okay if it changes, but you need to think about, in this increasingly complex world, what you want to achieve in life. So what can educators do? I'm running for local school board. If I win, I want to go and say hello to every student that comes into kindergarten. We're K to 12. I have those kids for 13 years. When they come in, I want to shake their hand and say, this is the profile of a Portchester graduate. This is what we're hoping to achieve over the next 12 years with you. These are the 4 or 5 character values that we stand for in Portchester, New York, right? And we want you to be a global citizen. We want you to be innovative in the future. So I think ultimately in Spanish, and I don't know if it's the same in Portuguese, and so we need to broaden the conversation. We need to give them, a real clear sense of where they're going. The sustainable development goals. Like those kids at 5 years old, they're going to be with me in 2030. Are we going to achieve it? What can we do to work together to achieve the sustainable development goals as educators, as students? How can we get them to come together as a community? So I think introduce the sustainable development goals, think about the profile of a graduate, and finally broaden education definition. In Spanish, they talk about educar and enseñar. Educar, when you're bien educado, means you're well brought up. When you're well educated in Spanish, it doesn't mean you're smart, it means you're well brought up. Bom comportamento, a good character. And I think we need to broaden the conversation, include character. And all too often in the United States, it's left aside.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, we need to think globally. That's the very good phrase, you need to think globally and act locally. I totally agree with that. So another question, is it possible to organize students' virtual exchange to reinforce otherness? Tony, please, can you answer that? It's made by Carla Schoninger.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, especially today with Zoom, right? This great technology we've been all using for the past year. So I'll give you an example. We have a chapter in the Philippines, Global Peace Foundation Philippines. And for the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years, they've been organizing this annual Global Youth Summit. Now, this was always done in person, but last year they had the first virtual one, where they brought together thousands of inspired young high school students, right, college students, onto this online platform, right, to discuss globally minded and innovative solutions to the pressing problems of our time. So they actually got 6,000 people registered for this, and it reached almost a quarter of a million viewers on Zoom and Facebook. And some of the things they were discussing was the healthcare. These were the concerns they had. The healthcare system, the environment, and the biggest topic was the educational reform in the educational system. So they were coming up with amazing ideas, right, on how reforms are needed, right, so that we can impact the new digital technologies, deal with issues of inequality, of access, right, that Aline just talked about here. And, when our students are put the horizon of the world in their mindset and creating a good and peaceful world, they are now in the realm of otherness. They are actually thinking about others in the biggest possible way, and the contribution that they can make to actually translate that into positive change, right, in all aspects of their life.
Thank you very much, Tony. This is really important because we focus on the individual, but we need to focus on society as well. So we need to manage that in class, the individuals and the collective, and it's another challenge. I have another question. how to create intersections between pedagogical knowledge, specific knowledge, and technological knowledge, Aline? This question is made by Rafael Bueno.
Oh, thank you, Rafael. Well, as I understand and live my pedagogical practice, it is we, theorists, who fragment knowledge in order to better approach it in terms of research. Knowledge as it exists in real life is not sectioned. Knowledge as recorded in the brain is also networked. If we take these aspects into account, the teaching proposal that you have promoted in federal institutes is more appropriate to reality, as it integrates the theoretical into practice in a way that universities in general have not been able to do. Although there seems to be something didactic in the separation between the pedagogical, the specific, and the technological knowledge, this division is arbitrary. These different areas of knowledge are transversal to each other. They belong to each other and dialogue for the construction of the whole. I think it is more interesting to mirror the functioning of life in the classroom than to insist on models that still treat knowledge as it were compartmentalized. That's my opinion for now about that.
Sure, thank you very much. Joe and Tony, do you have any input on that? You'd like to share any ideas?
I just want to say, I wish I spoke English as well as Aline.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy right now. Seriously, you made my day, Joe.
No, it's very articulate. It's funny. I can see the thinking and your knowledge coming forth as you discuss this. So, and I think Aline summarized it very nicely as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I have another question. We know competition motivates the students. How can we manage to explore it, but also develop values like empathy and kindness? Joe, please, this is a question made by Gieli Valim.
Thank you, Gieli. I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, but ultimately, I think a school is a learning community or like a family, and each family and each learning community needs to have a set of core values, right? And so when I used to love sports, and when I play sports, I would want the opponent to play as hard as they could. I used to hate it when I'd play sports and the other person didn't try as hard as they could. That way, that other person made me better, and we respected each other. So I think if you teach respect in sports, and Michael Jordan's a fantastic example. I can't recommend. There's a great Netflix show on Michael Jordan. He made every player on his team better. And so ultimately, sports can be a terrific arena to learn. And if the coach has a strategy or values of winning at all costs, you lose. If on the other hand, if he go between the lines and try your absolute best and whatever the result is, fine, then you can do it. And then you ultimately, at the same time, you need to develop values like empathy and kindness. And again, the good athletes will make the lesser athletes better. And I think empathy and kindness are sort of inherent. That's my view. I'm maybe an optimist, inherent in human beings. And I think we just need to build on that. And you can still be the best basketball player and the nicest person in the room as well.
Great. Yeah, sports. We also have sports at IFFar. Have many competitions as well here. So I think this is really important. I have another question here. How to proceed with hate speech by students, as well as the behavior of intolerance practiced by Dan. Tony, this is a question made by Fabio Dias.
Yes, so the way we deal with that is that we need way more of the opposite, which is good, respectful, and uplifting speech. And especially we're seeing this very prevalent online, right? We're seeing, unfortunately, a lot of hate speech, a lot of disrespect, and so on. So we should be, I think this is where our students can exhibit great student agency and take a proactive approach. And rather than just being passive bystanders, they can actually be promoting good speech and positive culture and good online content, right? We need more good content like that. So for example, a few years ago, Global Peace Foundation Kenya worked with Google on a national online safety campaign for students and teachers. So the anchor of this, right? The anchor of this campaign was the message that your in-person character should be consistent with your online character. So just in the same way you would not disrespect people or bully them or harass them in person, then you would be consistent in carrying those attitudes online. You would not do that online either, right? And it was a very big surprise for the students, right, as we traveled around the country, that you know, in this campaign, that their postings, that a person's postings online is permanent. You might delete it from your computer, but it is on some server somewhere in the world, and this stuff can come back and haunt you years later. So you should really, you know, it's the old adage of the West: think, not to shoot, think twice before you shoot first, right? So think twice before you post, because it's going to be permanent, right?
Absolutely. We have another question here. How can you bring our practices closer to the Generation Z students who arrive in our classroom today? So please feel free to answer that one, Aline.
Yes. Well, according to surveys carried out on who are Generation Z students in the USA and in Brazil, they are distinguished by some interesting aspects. They are more aware of environmental and financial issues than previous generations, and more reflective and socially engaged. For me, this is the perfect picture to develop wonders in classroom, as long as we help them to work their executive functions and emotions. At the same time, it is a generation of people who are very anxious and who have lived in a time when the effort is undervalued. Families, on the one hand, are more participatory. On the other hand, parents seem to be lost among a generation of overestimated work and money, and another that wants to be happy. Consequently, their children have difficulties in envisioning what will happen in the future, since the values passed on by their parents are ambiguous, and the world changes faster and faster. We always connect Generation Z to technology. That, in my opinion, will be the least of our problems as teachers. Our role should be to help develop executive functions and emotional attention and financial management, which will prepare our students for the constant change in life, and to assume their roles as protagonists in a world dominated by uncertainty of change itself. Hate speech, for example, linking this to the other question, are characteristics of people who are out of the arena, in Brené Brown's words. You know, when you are in the arena, fighting and being the protagonist of your life, you are much more careful. So our role with students from Generation Z, in my true opinion, is to help develop the management of emotion, financial control, and attentional control because of the speed of information from Facebook, Instagram, and etc. And of course, helping them to develop executive function so they can plan, so they can make better decisions, so they can see the consequences of the actions. So you can have more prepared people to act in society.
Absolutely, Ali. So now I'd like to ask you for your final thoughts, final comments on this discussion.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Excuse me. Do you mind if I make a question?
Oh, yes, please feel free to ask.
Okay. Well, we are surrounded by digital technology devices, but many education teachers have a huge difficulty in knowing how to deal with these artifacts in the classroom. Many call it as a digital divide. Well, in Brazil, computational thinking is foreseen in the disciplines and is included in the disciplines, but only a minority know how to deal with programming, understand how software is developed, deal with hardware, and integrate these elements together with their own area, in their own area of knowledge. It is, well, a different approach to solving problems, as we discussed here, using concepts and fundamentals of computing area. However, we have a great difficulty in working with teachers on these subjects. We have to gradually move away from instructionism and move towards constructionism. Well, then the question, in a developing country, how do you imagine the training of these basic education teachers? How to prepare students for a world in which the transformation takes place so quickly? Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick here. Christian, thanks for that question. Yeah, this is a really big issue, right? I think the pandemic really put a spotlight on, right? The how educators were just not prepared, right, for a world that got shut down overnight, right? And then they suddenly had to shore up on their digital skills and realized, my goodness, I'm not quite there yet, right? So it was a real struggle. So I think this has put us on alert to be in a state of readiness going forward. You know, I am seeing ministries of education accelerating efforts in the last 6 months or so to shore up teachers with digital skills. But I want to go to a point I made in the presentation, that we really do need to be moving out of this, out of the mindset of education in a silo as a government only thing, but as a whole of society approach. I'll give you an example. Like in Africa, we're working, Global Peace Foundation is working with Oracle Academy. And we're bringing the engineers from Oracle Academy into public high schools, right? And also tertiary institutions as well, to shore up teachers, right, on coding, on JavaScript, on data literacy, and so on, right? Because the curriculum doesn't provide this. So we bring in a partner who can actually fill that gap, for now at least, right? So I think more partnerships like that can be tremendously helpful.
Thank you, Tony. Joe,
Thank you.
Please, your final comments and remarks, please.
Yes, I would say it's never been a more exciting time to be young or alive. It's never been a more important time to be an educator. I think educators are being challenged as never before. They're being asked to prepare students for a world that no one understands, for jobs that do not yet exist. And as Tony was suggesting just there, I think ultimately then we have to come together and collaborate, everybody interested in education, Global Peace Foundation, One World, the Instituto Federal, Global, all need to come together and work together to try and find solutions solutions across the globe. All the challenges facing humanity are global in nature: climate change, artificial intelligence, nuclear proliferation. So that's what comes back to the theme that I talked about earlier. We need to prepare our students for a rapidly globalizing world of exponential technological change. And the stakes are very high. If we get it right, I am convinced we can create a world without poverty, a world without hunger. But if we get it wrong, obviously the challenges are quite great. So I'm very hopeful that these kinds of conferences are a wonderful starting point. I can't thank you enough. It's been an honor and privilege to share my ideas with you. Un honor, un privilegio estar aquí en mi país preferido do mundo, Brasil. Desculpa, um dos países preferidos do mundo. Muito obrigado. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Joe. Muito obrigada pelo seu entusiasmo. Aline, please feel free to share your thoughts and final remarks.
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you for this amazing opportunity to discuss some ideas with those very respectful educators. And I'm really, really happy for being here. Well, Christian has asked about some very important issues, in my opinion, which includes programming, which is the profession of the future, né? Right? Né is Brazilian. And I really believe that program is a fine way, actually is a very good way to promote executive functions. So maybe actually everything that we can think of to promote executive functions is very, very good. So I believe that teachers must be very creative on thinking of ways to promote these executive functions. And maybe in the future, we can have programming classes in the regular school. I think this would be amazing. You also highlight two aspects of these crises, issues, problems, and the solution, which is teachers and students, how we can form better teachers to deal with the challenge of the future, right? I used to say when I talk to teachers that being a teacher is the profession of happiness. It's the only profession, I guess, that you can be happy every day. I have been a teacher for more than 20 years now. I'm happy every day. Every time I enter a classroom, even remotely, I'm happy because I am with people and I love people. I love to see learning happening. This is amazing, but happiness is a choice, okay? Teachers, at least in Brazil, are very used to think that they have to have every knowledge from college. That's not going to work that way. That's not going to happen. You have to look for knowledge. You must seek knowledge. You must be hungry of knowledge. The more knowledge we have, more peaceful we feel to be in classroom and to make the transformation to begin. Isabella, please be quiet. My kid is playing. The students, they are going to learn who we are and not what we are talking to them. So if we are happy, if you teach with love, if we are full of knowledge that we live, not just as we speak, they are going to learn through our model. They are going to mirror in the society what we are for them. So I really believe that teachers must be taught or must develop their own emotional management so they can help their students. They have to think not only to teach intellectual knowledge in classroom. The classroom Classroom is a space for us to build knowledge, everybody together in a very happy and healthy way. So those are my final words for today. And I'm really, really thankful for being here with all of you.
Thank you very much, Aline, for sharing that with us, for being so enthusiastic about education.
Oh, I am.
Thank you so much for that.
Enthusiasm is my word.
That's great. We need that. We really need that. Please, Tony, feel free to share your final thoughts and remarks, please.
Yeah, I just really want to thank everyone. I want to thank Aline, great input from you, Aline, today. Joe, great input from you, Joe. And also Stephanie and Massimo for organizing this. This has been a great collaboration with the Instituto Federal and Global Peace Foundation. And as everyone was saying, we want to see, I just want to reiterate what Joe said. We need lots of more collaborations like this, right? It's like, I think, we all have an important contribution to make here, right? And, our impact can be so much more bigger and more effective by collaborating together. So I want to underscore that message. Great experience. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tony, for being part of this as well, for helping us to build this. Thank you all, guys. You've been amazing. I'd like to say that many people are making comments on all of your talks, and we have a lot of questions as well. So I think this is really important. If people have questions, they're really thinking about that. So this is being important. So thank you very much for being part of that. And it's not the last, stop here. We have another one. So next webinar, the topic is 21st century curriculum and assessment. This is really important to talk about curriculum and also assessment. So April 28, 1:30 p.m. São Paulo time. So please, I hope to see you all on next webinar again. So thank you very much. And thank you for all the questions and comments on the chat. We're going to collect this content and continue discussions here in the Institute, here at our campus. Okay, so thank you very much. The audience for being such a great audience, and the panelists for being so kind and to share your knowledge with us.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Aline. Thanks, Massimo.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you the next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.